try it on.
The new key suspect.
Watch Dogs is a series that never quite found its place. Its premise is a hacker in a world that's all connected to technology, where privacy is simply a thing of the past. And its idea of creating an open world within that premise is one that is really unique, and with you, the player, being in control to hack the world around you, is one of the strongest power dynamics in video games since Doom. And with its idea being so original and brimming with potential, it really is a shame that Ubisoft had to be the company to come up with it. Don't get me wrong, Ubisoft are very talented developers, when they want to be. Ubisoft titles always entail a unique basis for a game. The idea of being so original that it gets you hooked until the game releases and it's still dog shit and your dreams never come to true fruition. Ubisoft has only survived this long due to their really strong catalogue of game franchises. And every time they present a new game, they always promise it'll live up to what they present to you. But it never does. But I think we should take a step back and do some explaining for the non-gamer gamers out there who don't know who Ubisoft are and their past reputation. To put it simply, Ubisoft are consistent liars. A link is in the description to Crowcat's video on Ubisoft downgrades. I recommend you watch it after this video. Please watch my video first. Crowcat's video perfectly encompasses what kind of company Ubisoft are. They lie about what their game is to encourage pre-order sales, usually with some worthless pre-order bonus they'll call epic or legendary to trick your mind into thinking it's actually worth something, and then never live up to those expectations. And the best example is the first Watch Dogs game. When Ubisoft first showed off Watch Dogs 1 back in 2012, yeah, 2012, it's like nearly 10 years ago, Jesus Christ. And they showed the world this. Now they promised it'd work on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Did it? Yes, but at what cost? The direct comparison is beyond subtle downgrades like in previous game presentations from Ubisoft. What they did with Watch Dogs was too far. This wasn't that the game had changed with development, this was just lying. In fact, in the original Watch Dogs you can still access the better graphics, it's still in the game's files. They're even too lazy to remove it, it's just temporarily disabled. It was later revealed that the gameplay presentation was captured on a mega PC beyond the average consumers, far from an Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3. Ubisoft had done goofed with this one. They'd firmly stepped beyond the acceptable line and proudly stuck up their middle finger at us. Or at least that's how it felt anyway. The poor people who pre-ordered Watch Dogs after its reveal, you know what, let's just have a minute of silence. They deserve it. Yeah, that's close enough. Against all odds, Watch Dogs sold surprisingly well, but only because of its pre-order sales. The reviews came out and it was mediocre at best. Its protagonist, Aiden Pierce, had the personality of a 21st century Birmingham council house, and with the supporting characters and villains, except Jodie Chin, being even worse and somehow more forgettable than Aiden and his irksome, uninteresting revenge story across Chicago. Watch Dogs left a repugnant taste in everyone's mouth, reminding them how Ubisoft can never be completely trusted, a feeling that would also damage Watch Dogs' next installment. This game series seems to be one that never quite hit its mark, and with Ubisoft at the helm, I'm hardly surprised. However, I feel Watch Dogs 2 is the closest they ever got. Don't get me wrong, this game is cataclysmically flawed. Its story plotline and characters are uncompelling, unrelatable, and unfunny.
It's okay, Josh. You know why?
No, Satara. Why?
We're gonna hit him where it gigahertz.
Really unfunny. The protagonist, Marcus Holloway, is as empty and uninteresting as characters get. And it feels like the supporting characters are tasked to fill up Marcus's hole of a personality with incessant, unwitty, and did I mention unfunny jokes to fill the awkward silence of every car ride. But a car ride isn't a car ride without a destination, and Watch Dogs 2 has many you want to visit, which correlates to the atmosphere it presents. Watch Dogs 2 took quite the U-turn in its atmosphere, while Watch Dogs 1 was a gritty revenge story with a dark, unforgiving setting. With Watch Dogs 2, Ubisoft sought to solve this non-existent problem by turning its dark atmosphere into a more lighter and happy-go-lucky feeling, because nothing brings happiness and art and joy quite like taking down a tyrannical, oppressive company spying into our every move.
No. It's like sadtube.com. The channel for sad people, am I right?
And an example of this is seen in their decision on where this would all take place. After Watch Dogs 1 Chicago, next in line was the overpriced housing-filled San Francisco. And I have to say, I love what they did here. San Francisco feels alive and breathing, and Ubisoft encapsulated this near perfectly. NPCs react authentically and believable as they mind their own business walking down the sidewalk as you hack and pry into their bank account, revealing their secrets they have kept on their phone. But still, Watch Dogs 2's environment and iconic locations are recreated quintessentially and beautifully, with care. I can see it. And as a result, this may be Ubisoft's most immersive world to date. In my opinion. Yet we also know a game's world, no matter how complex, is only as deep and entertaining as the gameplay it provides. Watch Dogs 2's gameplay has created some of the greatest and most entertaining moments I have ever experienced with video games. There is a reason why I have 181 hours in the game. The creative freedom it gives you to complete each objective is a refreshing take, for me at least. You are given all these options that grow and develop as you expand your skill tree to unlock new perks, skills and abilities at your disposal, keeping each engagement exciting as it is fresh. However, one of the biggest criticisms I have with this game is its problem with ludonarrative dissonance. You may have heard this term before, but it's when the gameplay doesn't match with the context of the story, and Watch Dogs 2's Marcus Holloway suffers greatly from this. In cutscenes and told through the story, DedSec, that's Marcus's hacker group, strives to eradicate the big powerful companies prying into people's lives and exploiting them for data to sell, all for the people of San Francisco. Yet, that point that the game is trying to convey doesn't come across as well when I ran over 8 people on my way to the objective and killed 54 6 minutes ago in the previous mission. Yeah, I understand the game can't alter its cutscenes depending on what I do, whether that's kill or go non-lethal. But when Marcus talks like he's only using a taser to make people fall asleep, when in reality I'm using an AK to make people fall asleep all the same, it doesn't connect, which creates this barrier between you and the story, making it harder for you to sympathize and connect with the game's characters and story. Like it wasn't already hard enough. This game has flaws to no bounds, but still definitely deserves more attention. And it's a shame that it didn't get it. When people saw Watch Dogs 2 being advertised, I'm sure many let out an audible groan as Vietnam flashbacks hit them like a Pontian Aztec to those drug dealers. And so as a result, many people called for the wait-and-see approach for Watch Dogs 2. It goes like this. Step 1. Do not pre-order the game. Step 2. Wait for reliable reviews to come out. Step 3. Decide on whether to purchase the game. It's pretty simple, really. This meant that Watch Dogs 2 drastically underperformed pre-order-wise, and I really can't blame them for it. As it turned out, by 2016, the release of Watch Dogs 2, the wounds created by the original were yet to heal over for many, and so very few were willing to give its second installment a second chance. Watch Dogs 2 sales were dead by Ubisoft standards, and low. Steady, but low. However, over time, the game did manage to sell as well as the original, but of course over a long time frame. So this takes us to Watch Dogs' latest and I believe to be final installment, Watch Dogs Legion. After I sunk my teeth into Watch Dogs 2 for so many hours of my life, this game solidified its place as a series I ought to keep my eyes on for a new installment. However, like my father who'd promised to give up drinking for a month, I had doubts. Doubts that there'd ever be a new Watch Dogs game. After all, both games in the Watch Dogs series were either heavily criticised or barely reviewed. One left an abhorrent taste in everyone's mouth, reminding them about the somehow surprising bitterness of companies putting profit in front of their consumers on the priority list. And the other, a highly flawed masterpiece, soon falling into the dumping ground, not that dumping ground, that dumping ground of forgotten games, fading into the oblivion. No, not that oblivion, that oblivion. And so the chances of Ubisoft making another Watch Dogs game was not looking too good. However, on June the 10th, 2019, Ubisoft, to my surprise, did announce a new Watch Dogs game. And when they showed me this, my skepticism reached an all-new high.
London, greatest city in the world. Well, used to be. Now it's a right mess. The government's fucked off. Extremists are grabbing power. Organised crime's lasting up the boroughs. The war dogs are out. And freedom's a bloody joke.
I'm sorry, but that is one of the worst trailers for a video game I've ever seen. After I fell in love with Watch Dogs 2, all I ever wanted was more. More gameplay with new abilities and freedom, just in a new city. However, what I got was London, and more restrictions than ever before. But firstly, let's talk about how this reveal got me immediately worried. The idea of play as anyone was interesting, but with a lot of promises of it actually working, something Ubisoft are notoriously bad at. And also, the play as anyone feature didn't really pique my interest. It didn't seem all that impressive when considering the pros and cons. And lastly, its location. I wasn't happy with London. It was an interesting decision and could have worked well, but it's the fact that they chose the near future London that I have my biggest problem with. But first, let's dive into play as anyone. This took me by surprise. Against all odds, Watch Dogs Legion broke its record of having more forgettable protagonists. This time by not having one in the first place. The play as anyone mechanic is that instead of having one hacker be the technology equivalent to Jesus Christ our Lord and Saviour, Legion introduces the ability to have NPCs recruited with their own abilities and perks to add to the DedSec cause. Like I said, this seemed promising, but I was wary. However, when I got the game, the play as anyone feature, to my surprise, worked perfectly as intended. The only problem is, I didn't like the way it was intended. In Watch Dogs 2, you were this, albeit forgettable, crazy motherfucker of a hacker, with all these skills that you could develop and hone in each unique location. But what made this good is the fact that I could swap my playstyle and decisions on the fly. I could go from going all out using guns and killing everyone in sight to brute force my way to the objective, or I could go a more methodical way of using my drones and gadgets to find my way to the objective. There were still many ways to complete each objective, and it's this that made me love the game so much. In Legion, each character has their own restricted abilities, meaning that if you want a certain ability, you have to find and recruit someone to your team, which I found to become a rather tedious process. And then, they will hopefully join DedSec. The only problem is, each character's roster of abilities is as limited as my understanding of quantum physics, and this often led to gameplay becoming dry and stale too quickly, as finding new recruits felt closer to a chore than anything else. Walking around reading people's profiles was tedious and irritating, but what was more irritating was the fact is that there is a good game here. It's just deep down on the piles of dog shit, fleas, diseases, and fucking microtransactions. And even then, I would still recommend Watch Dogs 2. The play as anyone feature feels like a wasted time and energy on this game when it could have been better spent elsewhere. London was an odd choice in the first place, but to have it set in the near future, whatever the fuck that means, allowed Ubisoft to go wild and simply add implausible things that can now be technically passed as plausible. However, for my personal taste, for a game like Watch Dogs that has been set in this supposedly present-day universe for the past 2 installments, for it to all of a sudden be in the future, felt like it detached from the series' roots, which I'm personally not a fan of. You may be, but I'm not. What let me down the most about Watch Dogs Legion was its state right out of the box. I bought the Xbox edition of Watch Dogs Legion and immediately noticed performance issues. Heavy incessant screen tearing making the game annoying to look at and immersive breaking to say the least, and textures looking god awful if you're even a minor distance away. This is something that persisted throughout my playthrough of the game, and always left me disappointed. However, this game sits on the medium of looking revolutionarily beautiful sometimes, and looking on par with an Xbox 360 game. It's... well, I don't know. I waited 4 years for Watch Dogs Legion, and to say what I got in return was a disappointment would be a drastic understatement. This game series is one that has let me down time and time again, yet has also proven itself of its worth, manifesting it can be so very amazing and can live up to the promises Ubisoft told us with their silver tongue. But I still don't trust them. Ubisoft delayed so many of its games after Tom Clancy's Breakpoint proved to be the breaking point of Ubisoft shit the consumer could put up with. Breakpoint was clearly unfinished and featured many bugs. Most of everything was broken in some capacity. But do you know what the one thing that worked perfectly in the game? The microtransactions. Of course. Ubisoft faced due criticism for this and rightfully delayed their upcoming games, one of them being Legion. Oh, but please, would you care to hazard a guess what was there day one of Legion? Of course, a store page in the menu that featured egregious microtransactions. That, for me, was the straw that broke the camel's back. Ubisoft had proven that they can and will never change who they are. Every company needs to make profit to survive, I understand that. But when you're being as blatant as EA, you need to take a step back and sort your shit out. It's a shame that it feels like so many unique ideas come from such shitty developers. It feels like everyone is falling. The latest joint being CD Projekt Red with their abomination of Cyberpunk 207600. Watch Dogs was such a unique premise and basis for a game, brimming with potential. And it really is a shame that Ubisoft had to be the company to come up with it. To put it simply, the idea of Watch Dogs in the hands of Ubisoft is by all accounts a wasted opportunity. Thank you for your time, you are truly kind people. The first link at the top of the description is going to be to a straw poll where you can vote for what you want the next video to be about. And I think that's all I have to say. So hope you're all doing well, stay safe, and I'll see you next week for the next video. I'm joking, I'll see you guys in like 5 months.